Hi everybody, my name is Jada Simone. I am a poet and visual artist working in performance art, painting, sculpture, ceramics, all the things. And I'm going to be reading a poem that is a part of a collection of poetry that I'm working on, exploring themes of girlhood, Black girlhood, family, coming of age, loss, and resilience. So the poem that I'm going to be reading is called Maybe We'll Be Butterflies. The first time I cut my hair, I actually didn't cut it. My mother did, to teach me a lesson, to get me together, to mold me into her rendition of a lady. Pleated slacks and dress shirts, no makeup till 16, a permed bob, a side part bent on the ends in fluorescent pink rollers, tresses wrapped around, spiral bound, and always scattered across the bed. That day, broken strands floated down to the kitchen floor like music notes, scripting the songs of my mother and tiptoeing staccato around the soft spots of my head, dense and woody like snapped twigs yielding under the steady pressure of calloused feet and oil-stained hands. That day, I learned to crawl into the confines of my hollowed homebody, drop the dusty blinds and deadbolt the doors, chandelier tears nothing more than raindrops trickling down the backs of storm-proof windows. At least we were fed, at least we were warm. When the Michigan winters clawed at our throats, at least we could do anything we wanted to do. Decadent words slipped through crooked teeth, oppositional phrases in tiny air bullets, the perfect backdrop for playing indoors. I shrank in the kitchen chair, far too big for my body, tilting my head from side-eye glances, watching other little Black girls play across the street. Part 2. 18 and beautiful, only I didn't know it then. Molten lava, passion flowing everywhere but the catacombs of my honeyed irises. My mother knew someone who knew the language of clippers. Tucked right on the corner of 28th Street, side by side, the bustling beauty salon where her girlfriend crafted parables with a rat tail comb, all days of the week except for Mondays. Where blow dryers default set to a charred bliss, tender ears scoured and buzzing with gossip and high-set talk of young men behavior, drilling holes into the walls like carpenter bees. Hey ladies, in waves of somebody nephew selling silk scarves, braided, beaded bracelets, and aluminum-wrapped dinner plates, 2 for $10, what you got? I was on the other side, hidden, speakers blaring like Baduism, pulsing through outlets into the base of my skull. I felt his fingers slip together, gifting me a black cloak of invisibility. Failed experiments and burnt ends hanging off the side of my head, my torso hanging off the side of a hydraulic pumped chair, pressed sliding into the air on stainless steel wings. He was one of those I do it all types, those wait and see types, those she probably listens to Lion Babe, India, Irie, let me find out types. Somebody nephew, cousin, brother, uncle, baby boy. I showed him a screenshot he'd never seen before, and me neither. Neither did I, until I awakened in the beige waiting room, ping-ponging hot under a wall clock how I was going to do it, then redo it, then do it again. Chainsaw clippers ready in hand to cut me down. I couldn't help but contemplate the letters DVD ticking from corner to corner on a mounted screen. A wandering graphic, a tracer of time, counting breaths between each pass till he murdered the silence with chopped and almost screwed conversation. School in New York, try to study art or something. Oh yeah, I knew a girl who did that. I took deep breaths like it wasn't my first time. I've done this before, yeah, all in my mind. So you're gonna be like those artsy girls running around all naked? Not quite. And don't show me till it's done. When I revealed my new form, my mother cried her weight in tears, and my father erupted like Mount Vesuvius. Smoke and ash rushing from his nostrils suffocated under an explicit failure of language. My body calcified from the outside in as I hid my face, filtering for phrases, don't show me a thing until it's done. Part 3. There were no tears. Just late summer sweat river walking down the sides of sticky arms. Cheap tube tops and scented lotion, sweet like cotton bursting wide open and hanging off the side of my mother's girlfriend's paper hands. Weighted on both my shoulders, aged with cashmere wisdom, she stood from behind a properly placed wooden chair, smile lines and a wrinkled calfkin connecting the dots between baby girl and woman. A decade, once buried in soil, now tack-pinned against the walls of my tangerine eyelids, its spiny roots pining to wrap around something other than itself. By then, I've done it all. But thirsted to feel the beginning once more. A little more, a little more, a little more. Who could blame my mother, tacky-faced with perplexed emotion, hinging forward from simple machine hips, thighs wide, trying to bore brush coils into a rush of sequined waves, trying to brush down any trace of something other than the store-boxed dream sailing away from her since the day they told her to push me from her body. My father attempted to speak life into loss, but instead the concoction dripped from his dry lips. You look like an anorexic little boy. I pointed at the collapsed lines between his eyes and laughed from my emptied belly like the girl in pigtails pumping her scabby legs on the swing set, twilight hour growing cerulean dust over spider-reaching eyelashes. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Denice Peter Karamardian, and I am presenting to you today a trilogy of books. They're called ODAR, is the overarching theme. 3 books, 1 long story. ODAR means other in Armenian. That is the overarching theme of this book. But there are sub-themes. Girls' education, for example. Lots of sub-themes. And you can see it's a trilogy, but it's a lot more things than that. It's a true story. It's an immigrant story. It's a local history story. It takes place in Ithaca. It's the true story of my ancestors, their journey from Syria to Ithaca, Detroit and California, back to Ithaca. My immediate family is the Ithaca Peter family. My grandfather landed here to work at the salt plant in Myers in 1908. He dropped his last name of Karamardian and used his father's name of Peter, just as did all the Syrians that had settled there in Myers. He married one of them, Helen Mike. I thought he too was Syrian until I was 12. When I learned of his Armenian identity, the rest of my life has been spent researching that identity. Middle Eastern immigrants aren't that well, they're not that prominent in literature and cultural expression as many of the other immigrant groups, mostly, Eastern Europeans and Western Europeans. And then less so even the, Levant, Middle East. And I'm talking about the turn of the century period. And even less known, probably, I don't know how many of you have ever heard of the Armenian genocide, the very first genocide of the 20th century. Well, my grandfather, my Jiddo means grandfather in Syrian, left Syria in the middle of the night, was put on a boat by his family to save his life. That's part of the story. Came to Ithaca before World War I. But this story also includes what happened to those he left behind. He and his 2 brothers who followed him here managed to rescue 2 of their sisters from Ottoman slavehood. Most of the family did not survive, but those who did anchored the story of ODAR. And it's told mostly in their own words. So I have multiple characters in first person, mostly the women, because they know the most. I grew up with many, many crazy, wild stories, and I had to verify and document those throughout the years. In some cases, even discard some, because you know how stories go. But the story itself of the Karamardian family, which is a saga that spans 2 world wars, about 75 years, it's told in historical fiction form. And the events that shaped all the characters involved. Most of the chapters are told in first person by the various characters. But there is also a memoir component that anchors the action with my own journey of relevant discovery and crucial background information too for context. It kind of, anchors the reader. And that's offered in the form of prologues and epilogues and interludes, and it provides a parallel storyline interwoven with the family saga. So I am going to just read one little snippet from one chapter in the second book, just because I figured this audience, this is maybe what the least known part of history for you, maybe not. It takes place in the midst of World War I. It's in the voice of Louisa, who is a cousin of my grandfather and a major character throughout the series. And it takes place in Syria. And I'm going to skip around in it just to give you a snippet. I don't cover a lot of the genocide. I only cover how it affected our family. So it's just our family's experience within it, particularly 3 women in the family who survived and their individual story as they told it to us. Okay, so this chapter is this is book 2, Silence, which is another theme. This chapter 3 called Camps, and it begins in Kalagaran, Syria, July of 1915, and this is Louisa. The first day we walked long past nightfall. No one is allowed to rest. My father fell once and was prodded up with a bayonet wielded by a gendarme from atop his horse. The guards stop at times to chew on food they carry. At least once I saw them take away food from some of our people attempting to nibble on what they had brought while stumbling along the narrow path. They do not allow us to stop for eating or drink. I try not to look back at my father and mother, lest they see the water in my eyes at the sight of their struggle, which I am sure is far beyond my own. Mary has been crying since the sun lowered over the horizon, and I have grown weary of responding to her with comforting tones. I grow silent. By the second day, we are so used to being hungry that the cries coming from the others up and down the trail line no longer intrude upon my inner numbness. This time, when we stop to rest in the darkness, I note that the line has fallen out of formation and is crumpled together. We are on a ridge, and when the march resumes and I step a few feet apart from our group, I can see for quite a distance behind me. Many people scattered along the trail have dropped in permanent exhaustion, no longer part of the moving line of villagers. When we next come to a longer halt, I seek out Shushan, but not enough light remains to illuminate faces, and we are all incognito, a human mass of suffering. I turn to look at my Meirik, that means mother, and Heirik, and I am overcome with fear that they may not endure the journey, whatever the destination. Dear God in heaven, do not let it be so. May these thoughts flee from my sick and exhausted mind. Their faces betray nothing, and I know they are determined not to frighten the little ones. These thoughts are interrupted by a scream from the gathering dusk that pierces my consciousness. An animal? A girl? The dread is instant. I have heard about girls being dragged into the darkness and used and sometimes stabbed afterwards. Some girls take their own life after this. But I am not certain of what I heard, and it has now ceased. On the 5th day Father again collapses. Mother lets out a shriek that climbs up my back, and I twirl on my heels, heart pounding, desperate to reach him before the gendarme. By this time, the gendarmes have been cruelly jabbing at the fallen with their bayonets to keep the line moving. I have seen them spear right through the bellies of some of our people. By now, we have learned not to stop, not to try to help our neighbor, not to yell our indignations, but to keep walking and concentrate on staying upright on the path, lest we lose our footing and perhaps our lives. When Hayrig falls, Mayrig and I try to pull him up, desperately begging him, pleading. With Garabet still on my hip, I try to help as best I can, grabbing under the opposite arm from the one Mayrig is yanking on, willing his lifeless body to react. This time there is no resisting the tears. Dear God Almighty, help us. Please, please, Hayrig. It is no use. Father has lost consciousness, and stopping is not possible with the gendarme bearing down on us, bayonets poised above our heads. We stumble on, misery in every step. Mother and Mary sob for almost 12 hours until the next sleep at darkness, when they surrender to the exhaustion of tears coupled with more steps than should be humanly possible. I could not allow myself to cry, not now. Ironically, the very next day we arrive. At first, I'm not sure where. It is a city. We are herded together in the outer end of town, pushed into an endless sea of people as ragged as we. Bread is passed out once a day. There is a trough of water, the kind I have seen used for horses and goats. We attack it, plunging our faces into the water just like everyone else. Father missed bread by one day, I think. My tears come now unashamed. Now, that's okay. Not all of the story is that sad. It's just, it goes everywhere. There's a lot of humor, a lot of joy, and a lot of laughter, but it is, it is the stuff that makes families. And this is just our particular version of what an immigration story is like. So thank you for considering it. I did leave some bookmarks around, and I have plenty of stuff with me if anyone's interested. The books are also at Buffalo Books and Odyssey Books and at Barnes & Noble, and you can reach me from the website. Yes. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Jon Raimon. I teach at the LACS for many years, right along with my students, and sort of the angsty teenage tone of all my poems. Right, so. I think they're all from within the last month or so, or maybe a month and a half, 2 months. This one's called Burying the Dead Possum. Tongue lolling, teeth a-glitter, nothing left but freedom. I buried this possum this morning, left by my wife over a long, long weekend. A weekend of goodbyes. My daughter, sly and shy, all strawberries and storm clouds, dropped off in Queens, of all places, the city. Freedom and dusty shop windows, so many lives there and gone. And when I buried the possum this morning and spoke a benediction, I trembled. Not at the stank, not at the intrusion of humans on her lush spring habitat. No, I trembled as I inhaled, thinking of the sleeping boy, the boy man, still in my house, chest still rising, sinking. Thank the gods of childhood, of nature. Thank all the therapists and psychiatric nurse practitioners, the meds, some of them. That one kind teacher. And thanks to his mom, the one who loathes possums, make her tremble. but who still dragged it out of Main Street so I could bury it on my return. She's brave, my wife, and not. We are all cowards in our own ways, but not our son. His chest rises, sinks, and this fear hovers. Specters of birth moms gone missing, shadow fathers, unknown brothers. I wonder if I have any siblings. He finally asks as we landed in Queens, with the one sister he has tried to love and live beside all his 18 years. Maybe, I said, too hushed. That is, I spoke up. You do, I know you do. And I wanted to add and didn't add, and did bury this rising, this sinking inside me, the 1,000-day mares, that one nightmare of his burial. Tender brown eyes alight, wit percolating within, digging its way up and out, zombie-like. But no. My children, they are here. One a queen, one a prince. Good night, sweet prince, my father would say. Perhaps forgetting, perhaps recalling that we all go. But I was 10 and thought I would grow up to be Lancelot or Arthur to vanquish the dark. Instead, I grew old to revel here in this dark. And the other night they came, my children, my own dream of my own demise. We all own that right, our own burials. And in the dream, a waterfall rose, and they stood like warriors, like peacemakers, as siblings, fraught and frightened, sad and strong, together, free. And this one I wrote at Easter. Most of my family's Jewish, but we celebrate everything. So missing my mom on Easter. Tidy eggs and faux 2 green grass, one more plastic basket in a world littered with dreck. She meant well, my mom, each Easter, which I capitalize here in her honor, in her disgrace, as she died and as she lived. Glamorous drunk. It is a thing my mom was. Especially on holidays where dazzle and glitter, rebirth and miracles, diamonds and chunky necklaces rule the moment, our hopes. It all passes on. With egg hunts gone wrong, Kent cigarette butts and cute glass pint gin bottles dug up in the yard, beside the prefab eggs filled with cheap chocolate and blood money. And that last egg, unearthed behind the playhouse where your big brother shoots up, rebirths himself till he's vanished. You finds it, that egg, months later. It's odd, a near dead blue. Drained by the spring rain, the summer's rioting sunblast. When you open it, there it is. Tucked tight, fetus-like, right beneath a traumatized slug in her dazzling golden ooze. Love. Just plain old love. Who the hell knew? How much time do I have? This one, the good one for my mom, so this one my dad. Does reference suicide, so there you go. Manhood. To be that composed, to be in that much pain, to be that stoic, wiry black hair barely combed, to be so cradled by reason, to be so broken, to be so emasculated, pee bags, catheters, power brought low, to be so clear-headed, to be so morally grounded, to be ready to do battle. At 19 years old, hot shot through the neck, fighting fascists, to be so filled with love, to be so hard, to be so alone, Wheelchair and New York Times and hidden handguns, to be so physical, to be so vibrant, to be so broken. Hurling little me across his lap, a soldier's grip on my arm near the breaking point, all laughter and safety in that violent embrace. And the breaking point would come for him. And he stood alone, well, sat alone, reclined alone, door closed. And in his note, just no guilt, none, love, Dad. And I didn't hear the shot, and I hear the shot sometimes now. And I wish that none of us men ever had to be that alone in our power and in our fear. I'll come for one last one. So, the world today, right? So, dear nation, dear heartbreak, dear not hopeless yet, my advice may be meager. I should just back up. So, my students, we read a lot of Baldwin and we write letters of advice like he did to his nephew, and then this poem came out. Dear nation, dear heartbreak, dear not hopeless yet, my advice may be meager, yet and yet not done, not done. It begins here in this diner, weakish coffee, grease and eggs, God, don't say eggs. And it begins with saying clearly, saying to someone next to you, someone who scares you, someone dangerous in your mind, saying, I am human. There is so much to me. I want you to know me. I want to know you. And there's the how, the howl, the how. Do we do that when our lives are under threat? In these chokehold times, our true history gasping. How would my trans students do that? Or my daughter, who dons queerness like a victory shawl? Or the black men in my family? Or all the women strong and struggling? These bullies and bigots puffed up, emboldened in ugly glee. So how do we talk to someone who scares us, who we scare? What if we write each other? No. What if we bring our pets with us? Share a meal, fries, maybe gravy. Come with our grandparents who hate it when anyone is rude. What if we promise to just listen or make tea first? What if we look at the moon while we talk? Or what if we name 3 things we are grateful for? And I imagine some of those things will be the same. Kids. There's always kids. We share that. Broken kids. Kids wanting some joy. Somewhere to be. What if we build something for someone in need? Sing a classic rock song while we do it a bad one. I need to know you are not just a monster. You need to know I am not just some elite asshole who thinks you're trash. Meet me for coffee, right here, if that is good for you. The first cup on me.
I'm Elizabeth Stuelke. I'm really glad to be here. I'm a filmmaker, so it's an odd thing, but I'm going to read from my script, and I'm very interested in that. I don't know, juxtaposition or change that you make as a writer, envisioning what you're writing to be envisioned by someone else, or me, as I'm a director, but making it into something else. I'm intrigued by that. And I have a short film. I'm going to hopefully do the feature, which this is from, and wish me luck. It is called Her Lover. Fade in, exterior number 12, patio day. The heat of this 1975 day is heavy. The house is run down, the patio is makeshift, the picnic table rickety. Lem, 50s, gruff, man of the house who takes it all out on the family, but he keeps pulling punches, not going too far. And young Sandy, the 11-year-old baby of the family who hears too much and is about to be stunted by it all. They sit by the picnic table on the patio, ready for a barbecue. Cecil, 20-year-old boy toy of the times, hippie floater, found his family and is hanging on. He means to mean well, but he mans the grill. Young Jen, the 15-year-old too cool for school, she's going to make the most mistakes. She joins Sandy on the bench. The girls argue. That was my stick. Young Sandy grabs her marshmallow roasting stick back from young Jen and puts it on the table next to her plate. Lem angrily grabs the stick and throws it into the yard. You don't need the damn stick on the table. Young Jen smirks at young Sandy. But enough. Young Sandy snaps to attention and takes the paper plate from the stack in front of her before Lem gets too irate and looks an apology at Cecil. Sarah, 35, the mother, the one who needs to see it all make sense but senses it doesn't, stands at the end of the table closest to the house, takes a camera from her dress pocket and snaps a picture, goes back into the house and returns carrying a glass salad bowl. She stares at young Sandy. Young Sandy blushes. Sarah watches them all getting ready to eat, talking, laughing. Lem watches Sarah watch them. He frowns and grabs his beer, keeping an eye on her. Ignoring the adults and their boring problems, young Sandy and young Jen tussle. Young Sandy attacks her sister's arm, becoming violent. Young Jen tries to fight her off, but young Sandy comes away with a shell bracelet from her arm. Young Sandy throws her arm behind herself. Sarah is watching. Sarah's eyes drift from Sandy's to the bracelet behind her back, to Cecil, to Lem. Her color drains. Her arms droop ever so slowly. The bowl falls from her hand, slowly, to the ground and shatters. Young Sandy reaches for the bowl as it slips out of Sarah's grasp. She falls off the bench towards her in the bowl. Young Jen rises on her knees next to Sandy. Leaning on the table, she knocks over her Coke onto Lem's burger. Lem slams down his beer and leaps up. Damn it. The kitchen screen door slams. Everyone jumps at the sound. Sound of water from the tap in the kitchen. The others return to eating. Young Sandy looks to the kitchen, tears brimming. Lem shoves the pickle jar to Cecil, who holds a double burger and smirks at young Sandy. Young Sandy is torn from yearning after Sarah. She returns the grin. Lem looks at Sarah's burger, waiting on her plate, and puts down his beer, wipes his mouth. I'll get her. Cecil coughs into his fist, ignores the ketchup dribbling down his chin. He continues to grin at young Sandy. Young Jen shakes her head in disapproval at the pair of them. Young Sandy takes a bite of her burger and mimics Cecil, holding it tightly as mustard drips down her chin. Lem, in a panic, yelling for Cecil, reappears at the patio. Cecil, get in here. Everyone jumps at his voice. Cecil, hurry. Cecil springs past the grill and knocks over Sarah's stool. What's happening, young Jen? Young Jen stands her hands on Sandy's shoulders. Stay here. Lem mumbles and swears under his breath. Cecil follows him. Young Jen pushes young Sandy down as she tries to follow. Sit down. The hell? Young Sandy pops up off the bench. Just wait here. It's no big deal, I'm sure. I'll stay out of the way. The girls both rush after Cecil. Exterior number 12, side yard day. Hot on Lem's heels, Cecil strains to push past him up the kitchen stairs. Lem enters before him. Lem off screen. So goddamn much blood. Young Sandy springs past young Jen up the back steps. Young Jen pushes her back to block her to view of the kitchen. Lem off screen. Help me get her over here. What have you done? I didn't make her choose. Sounds of water running. Young Sandy to young Jen. What? Shh. Young Jen backs out of the doorway, bumping into young Sandy, who stumbles downward down the stairs as Cecil and Lem carries Sarah out of the house. Sarah's left forearm is wrapped bulky in a towel soaking red, where she's fatally slit her wrist. Blood is everywhere. Young Jen turns to young Sandy violently so she can't see Sarah, dodging in front of her, keeping her from the worst of it. Lem takes Sarah's weight as he and Cecil approach the car. Get in the car. Lem fights hysteria. He looks at young Jen, holding young Sandy. Cecil stands motionless, blood on his hands. Cecil, get to the car. Cecil closes his eyes for a split second, then grabs the girls, turns them toward the back of the car. What's wrong with Mom? Get in, quick. He jumps back to help Lem get Sarah in the back seat. Ghost white, young Sandy looks over her shoulder, speaking to no one in particular. What's happening? Will she eat dinner? She never gets to eat. It's not fair. Young Sandy turns to young Jen, tears stream down both their faces. Where's Dad taking us? I'm hungry, too. I wasn't finished. Young Jen pinches young Sandy's arm hard. Young Sandy cries out, protectively holding onto Sarah's bracelet on her wrist. Interior station wagon day. Young Sandy and young Jen are crouched in the way back of the station wagon. In the back seat, Cecil holds Sarah's head in his lap. She is unresponsive, already lifeless. Lem speeds out of the driveway and down the street. The car radio is loud. Radio announcer voiceover. Today's weather will be 78 degrees Fahrenheit, and tomorrow storms are coming through our area and flooding is possible on low-lying roads. Young Jen holds young Sandy down as she screams. The car stops fast. Cecil looks back at the girls. Lem comes around the car to get Sarah. Young Sandy's screams grow louder as screams fade out. Groans Sandy's voiceover. Mom's suicide was the end of many things. But suicide is a way of opening doors that were hidden in plain sight. We needed to open them, but it took a long time before we were able to do it. Fade to black.
So, my name is David Guaspari. So one of my favorite writers is Donald Westlake, who is frighteningly prolific in just about every prose form. And at one point he said he intended to publish at least one of everything, including greeting cards. So I'm not prolific, but I'll try most things. So this is a little essay that's just come out in the spring issue of a literary journal called Pleiades. And it's about one detail of the comic books I used to read when I was a boy. This is before Marvel. So in the last page of a Superman or a Batman, it would be a page consisting of dozens of ads for junky novelties. And about the only good thing I could say about them is that they're real physical things, they're not pixels. Okay? So, okay, that's the point of this essay. The title is, for reasons I hope will be obvious, Whoopee. Okay, so, sing, goddess of stuff, of the actual, not the virtual, of the tangible, however shabby. Sing of crap, X-ray specs, amazing sea monkeys, the ventrilo, throw your voice. Dribble glasses, snapping gum, cigarette loads, Polaris nuclear sub, over 7 feet long, big enough for 2 kids. The spy pocket telescope, invisible ink, flash paper, how to be a handcuffed king and mystery man, stink bombs, practical prospecting, the pocket manual of treasure finding, itching powder, a ramjet engine that runs on gasoline, safe indoors and out. So sing of a boy's world, wonder-filled, and comic book ads jam-packed with tiny type. Those ads belong to the past. Johnson, Smith & Co., the novelty company that placed so many of them, is also gone. As is the Shangri-La in which it flourished, one with relaxed views about fraud and liability, and with notions of friendship and social life that didn't preclude the genial infliction of humiliation and physical pain. Some of the canonical stuff is still available, though not, unfortunately, a gasoline ramjet. Some of it can even be found on Amazon, which is wrong. For starters, Amazon involves an adult, or at least someone with access to a credit card. Whereas Johnson Smith was willing to swap stuff for other stuff and take payment in currency, coin, or postage stamps. And the soulless predictability of an Amazon transaction tears the heart out of mystery, replacing what was once an act of faith. Dispatch an envelope stuffed with currency, coins, and/or stamps into the continent's dark interior, a street address in Detroit, and check the doorstep several times a day for weeks, waiting hopefully for a disappointingly small package addressed to your very own self. But the internet has no Mysterioso Detroit. On the internet, there is just only one place, and we are always in it. Someone with a credit card can effectively reach through the screen and grab hold of whatever you want. Except that you don't know what you want and can't easily say to Amazon, show me things I will covet the moment I see them. The crowded slum of ads on a comic book page, a perfect union of form and meaning, solved that problem. It offered, and its form symbolized, a chaotic and disreputable universe of things a 10-year-old boy would die to have. Cramming that universe onto a single pulp page imposed strict limits, a great spur to creativity. The artist drawing a tiny, low-resolution vignette that tells and sells the story of a gag, magic tricks, or scientific wonder can't iconify every one of its alleged attractions, so is forced to choose. Acquisition of astounding new powers, amazement, hilarity, and or derision from onlookers, surprise or mortification of a quote, friend, also referred to as victim or sucker. Or perhaps hints of how the magic is made by radio waves, electric shock, questionable sounds or smells, blunt force trauma. Amazon, having essentially infinite space, demands no imagination. Photos that are mere documentation, descriptions padded with pointless detail. For snapping gum, weight 0.02 pounds, and color, yellow stick of fake gum color. And there are demystifying reviews, such as this one-star take on the snapping gum. Spring is not strong enough to be used for grown-ups, only good for kids. Now that product, if you need reminding, turns a fake stick of gum into a small mouse trap. While the stick is in the pack, the trap remains set. Pulling it out releases the spring-loaded bar to snap on the nearest finger. So the reviewer is complaining that pain is inflicted on children but not adults, which I suppose, if the targeting of children was a deliberate design choice, might qualify as a war crime. But I doubt that this was his problem. And by the way, does anyone doubt that that reviewer is a he? Okay. Au contraire, says a 5-star review, gets all my friends. So picture that reviewer, a chronological adult, and the deadbeat pals always mooching his gum and dumb enough to fall for the obvious fakery. Good reviews should encourage a sporting lad to pull off a Mary Jane, not blight his youth by implying he'll turn into a guy like that. Or like this reviewer of a different product. To say I'm extremely impressed doesn't accurately describe my feelings about this fart spray. The this implies a man surveying options, a connoisseur who stocks the equivalent of a wine cellar, to which he may retire in search of interesting pairings. In the golden era of free reviews, offerings were sent to Detroit in total ignorance of other buyers or their fate. Ideally, there would be no others. No one else would have his hands on an item that was about to make you special. Its result could be ecstasy or more often disappointment, such as learning how small something actual size turns out to be, or your father pointing out that, well, corrugated board is cardboard. The present offers grace to the past, and those disappointments leave no permanent regrets. Sitting in a cardboard Polaris submarine pretending to, quote, dive, surface, maneuver, and release nuclear missiles and torpedoes is not ridiculous. It's the exercise of a superpower, an ability to experience the joy of crap, until in a stroke of irony, the submarine gets wet. The best selves of adults collaborate, applauding the astounding illusion of the multiplying balls and pretending to be conned by squirting flowers and snake in a can. You and they find your past self endearing, eager to embrace wide-eyed a world blooming with an astonishment of stuff, but maybe not that stuff.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for these fantastic readings. It's great to hear what everyone's working on. I'm Hana Widerman and I'm a poet an MFA student at Cornell, and I'll just read a couple of poems from my first book of poetry in progress. First one is Athena Redux. 10 years before my father gave birth to me, I knew I would exist. The lines of life were clear to me. I would never be born with his eyes. My lifespan would outlast his, though he was also a god. When he was trying to make a world through words, his first thought was me, hair flailing down a mountain. Then came the broad sky, gleaming eyes of the horses rising up from the sea, the name of my new city burning in his pocket like a piece of snow. At the time, my thoughts were flights of fancy at the corner of his, butterflies with little weight. If I spoke from the lily inside a book, my voice would contain a different vibration. So was my voice in my father's head, weak as a blossom growing in a darkened place. Around me, life has now changed. He has gone through the largest pain of his life, his head aching, the axe. I turned my butterflies blue to soothe him. I let loose cold rain. I step out into the clearing, let him see me fully grown, the sparrow released from his brain. And this next one is called Collage of Wreckage. When the earthquake hit Japan, I remember it rained in California. I walked outside and imagined what it'd be like to be carried by light and water, like my mother leaving home. It was still early morning. My grandparents were not by the sea. In the mountains of Yamagata, rare fish flooded the shores for months. After school, we released rainbow trout into the lake. In Japan, buildings filled with water. I have never known where to place the gap of myself. I have never looked up the names, the Inca songs my mother sings, weaving bamboo into reeds, placing freeze-dried orchids, mimosa, ajisai, grape leaves into art. The wind blows away her careful angles. Those same hands on the bedroom door, pushing it in before I sleep, her voice, the shocking abundance of blackberries pulsing under the sun like brains. I must go into the thicket, take the fleshy knowledge from her hands. She wants me to remember everything she has touched. Her first husband, who lives by the beach in Sausalito, a pale yellow postcard for voter registration, the joy of seeing a blue jay shimmering through a redwood forest, the remains of broken dishes in a brown paper bag, a collage of wreckage to prove it can be done. Sound of my mother's voice in my bedroom, pain or dream, either way, too many times remembered. As I see the world, inheritance floods our mouths each morning like possession. My grandmother, my mother, the hollow sound of watermelon when hit by a flat hand, house smaller with each new layer of paint in the hallways. I rock back and forth with the weight, house braced for movement, familiar shifts of a woman dressing to leave. And I just have two more poems left. This next one is called The Dream of the Red Pickup Truck. My mother, secret I see only through brief glimpses. My mother, who wanted to send President Biden chocolate after he canceled her student loans, who learns tax codes late into the night, who is married 2 men in her life, who stops on the sides of roads to pick flowers, who tried to take me hiking through my many heartbreaks, my mother who can never stay still. A vacation is never a time for dreaming. It is a time to pull anything anyone ever could out of a space. I want to spend some time in my bed desirous, all sinuous, just for an afternoon. I want this poem to make you feel something in your body. Give me all the moods and tenses of action. My mother got the big tires to go through snow and rain and unpaved roads, red Chevy Avalanche pickup truck. I enjoy the feeling of that in my mouth. This is the car of dreams, taking up the road in sweet abundance. My mother, with her blow-dried hair, volume fresh, with a curved brush just that morning, she's twisting through the streets, windows down, the Japanese Medusa turning men to stone. And this last poem is called The Painting in the Living Room. Thank you so much again to everyone for being here. The wood of the frame has no shine, like my father's teeth, stained from a lifetime of coffee. Inside the frame, 2 ships float over a turquoise sea, performed in vague strokes. My father's scribbles over a faded crossword, black birds in the distance. Sometimes he is like how I remember. I would have loved to watch my father's first steps as my grandfather worked the wood of the frame and found its proper thickness, curled strips of wood falling to the floor like fiddlehead ferns. I wish for his intuition whenever I search for my father, looking into every unlocked car in the parking lot for the flash of his blue shirt. Woodworker and musician, to hear the flute's music change as my grandfather carved its body, to know there is only one way my voice could have formed. The first night my father was born, he slept in a house made for him by his own father, and in the morning he cried among the fresh scent of wood and his father's hands.